The Tolkien Road, Episode 77, Akallabêth, Part 2. Alright, go ahead. The Tolkien Road, 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 the Tolkien Road. Hey there, fellow travelers. Welcome to the Tolkien Road, a long walk through the works and philosophy of J.R.R. Tolkien. On this episode, we continue and conclude our look at Akallabêth, the story of Númenor's rise and fall in the Second Age. Before we get started, why not hop on over to iTunes and leave the Tolkien Road a rating and feedback? It's a great way to show your support for the show and takes less than a minute. Thanks for listening, and enjoy. Hello everyone, welcome to the Tolkien Road. Greta, what's new? What's new in your world?
Not a whole lot.
Since we last spoke, which was the last time we recorded.
Right.
Yeah.
Because we just never talk, even though we live under the same roof.
Yeah.
Not much.
Yeah.
Not much is new. How about you?
Well,
silence.
There's, I could probably come up with some stuff, but let's be honest.
Stuff too, but
let's be honest. No one who's listening cares. Let's just be honest.
I don't think that's fair. I think.
I'm just being honest here. I'm just being honest.
You being honest.
I'm not. I don't think I'm being cynical. I think I'm just being, honest.
Yeah. Maybe
they just love us for our Tolkien knowledge. That's all.
I guess things could be worse.
They realize we're really people. No, things are good.
Yeah.
I'm doing okay.
Good.
Rhetorically speaking.
Rhetorically, yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, we've got to keep the rhetorical in mind.
That's right. Rhetorically speaking.
Rhetorically speaking.
Yeah, doing well.
Yeah, good.
Doing pretty sweet, I guess.
Terrific.
Akallabêth Part 2.
Yes.
Part 2.
I'm going to finish this thing up.
That's right. Yeah, so you felt like it was a little more exciting, this second part of it.
Way more exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of, or maybe it's just because I went in it, like, kind of prepared to be bored, like I was with the first half.
Yeah.
And so maybe it seemed more exciting than it really was because I was expecting it to be a snooze fest. And it wasn't.
It's like it caught you off guard.
Yeah.
It's like it set you up for boredom and smacked you with awesomeness.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes.
Surprise attack of awesomeness.
I was ambushed. Ambushed by an amazing conclusion.
That's right.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is pretty amazing. Well, before we jump into it, we had a note of correspondence from a listener. This is from Aaron Santana, and he commented on our the episode we did back on or around March 25th on the Lord of the Rings and the Annunciation. Remember that one?
Oh, vaguely.
Yeah, the connection between those two. He said, Hey Carswells, I'm reading the appendices, the section on Durin's folk. Thorin runs into Gandalf by chance in Bree. In this meeting, they make plans to take care of Smaug and set up the events of The Hobbit to take place. An interesting thing to note is that this day is also March 25th. I'd like to hear your take on this matter. Love the podcast. Well, thanks for writing, Aaron.
Thank you.
That's cool. I commented in reply to his comment that I was not aware of that, and that's fascinating. Yeah, that's cool. The connections with March 25th just seem to abound. And the very
we
significant.
recorded on March 25th.
No, so. Come on, you've forgotten already.
Gosh, we've done.
What's March 25th?
Oh, the Annunciation.
Right.
Sorry, I was thinking of the Assumption. I was getting kind of confused. I was like, the Assumption isn't in March. We just celebrated the Assumption. Okay.
Oh, man.
Annunciation, Assumption.
Catholic points just dropped. The Catholic points just dropped.
Everybody knows I'm the bad Catholic in the family.
Getting the Assumption and the Annunciation mixed up. Yeah.
No, it's not that I got them mixed up. I was just thinking of one while you were talking of the other. Yeah. That's all.
Well, this episode was about the connection between the Annunciation and which is relevant for Tolkien because it's what on fairy stories he calls the incarnation. Mm-hmm. If the Annunciation is the moment of the incarnation, mm-hmm. that's like the eucatastrophe of human history. Right.
Eucatastrophe of eucatastrophes.
Right.
Yes.
So anyway, this Aaron's just making the point that apparently Thorin and Gandalf have a chance meeting in Bree on March 25th, leading up to the events of The Hobbit, and that's when they decide that they're going to go take care of Smaug and win back the Lonely Mountain, which of course sets all of the events running, mm-hmm, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, sets all the events leading up to the destruction of the One Ring.
You're absolutely correct. So, and that happened on the feast that Tolkien mentioned in the book of that event is the same as the Annunciation.
You're right. Got
it. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
What is your take on that?
Well, I don't know if I have so much of a take, but it's cool. You know, it's always mm-hmm. fascinating to find these connections.
Yeah. It has to be intentional.
As has kind of become one of the themes. So, you know, one of the many themes that we discuss on the show. One of the things we're doing as we go along is we're trying to unpack what exactly Tolkien meant by the whole idea of that Lord of the Rings was an intentionally religious and Catholic work.
Right.
If not in the writing, you know, primarily in the writing, then definitely in the revision. You know, it's kind of like looking mm-hmm. back, he realized how much of his faith he put into it.
Right.
You know, even though he was not writing an allegory.
Right.
He was not trying to like retell the story of, you know, Christianity in different terms, but he was connecting it with the story of Christianity.
Right.
With the larger narrative of Christianity.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
So
that connection on his part had to be intentional. I mean, he wouldn't just randomly pick March 25th, being the good Catholic that he was.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's what Aaron's asking about, but so I don't know if that was intentional. I mean, something has to happen on March 25th every year, so I don't know. And Tolkien was, you know, pretty intense about like documenting the history, like mm-hmm. down to the date in some case, you know, down to the very day in some cases, mm-hmm. And especially it would seem during this era, but. You know, well, I don't have my copy of Return of the King out here, so we can't look at the appendices. But yeah, you know, maybe that's what I need to do for Aaron is go back and look and actually look at the reference and, you know, see what I think. But
yeah,
you know, I'm guessing if he actually called it out as being March 25th, it was intentional. You know.
Yeah, I would think it would more than likely.
Yeah.
Be intentional. Yeah.
So and
that's a really cool point though.
Yeah, but it's cool that it coincides with, you know, their kind of chance meeting and their planning again is maybe a providential point.
Absolutely.
It takes place in that.
Yeah.
Day.
Totally.
So, yeah. All right. Well, cool. Thanks for writing, Aaron. I appreciate the note.
Aaron.
And keep in touch. Keep listening and keep in touch, and I appreciate the kind words about the podcast.
Yeah. Yes, we do.
We love our listeners.
We do love our listeners.
Yeah.
I love getting notes from the people.
I can't tell you, folks. Like, it makes me feel so good when we hear from y'all.
It really
whether
does.
it's hearing from folks like Josh and Mary Grace, who we hear from on a fairly regular
mm-hmm.
basis, or whether it's just people who pop in every once in a while to say,
mm-hmm.
listening
mm-hmm.
to the podcast and love it.
Yeah.
You know, we know there's a lot of y'all out there, but it's always great to actually hear directly from somebody, and you know,
something tangible.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very encouraging.
Absolutely, it is. Absolutely, it is.
It kind of, it's that whole, you know, you can't underestimate the value of community.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So keep it coming, guys.
Keep it coming. Keep it coming. So, part 2 of Akallabêth, the rise and fall of Númenór. We've kind of experienced the rise of Númenór in the first half of this little mini novella,
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And now we're going to be experiencing the utter fall of Númenór, which kind of began with the end of the last episode.
Right.
But we're going to see like the culmination, just the utter collapse of Númenór. The literal fall of Númenór.
Yes.
Very literal fall of Númenór.
Literal.
So when we left off last time, Ar-Pharazôn, which I didn't point this out last time, but it's interesting to me that Ar-Pharazôn sounds so much, looks so much like Pharaoh on paper, and I haven't looked into that to see if Tolkien made that connection intentionally.
It sounds like Pharaoh too.
Yeah.
When you say it.
But it's just interesting that there's that. So maybe somebody out there knows if that was intentional on Tolkien's part. It is certainly intentional that one of the names, and I can't remember which language, but one of the names of Númenór and one of Tolkien's many languages is basically Atlante, which is
like Atlantis.
And
Tolkien
Tolkien intended Númenór to be very like the genesis of the idea of Númenór, as I understand it, was Tolkien's fascination with the whole idea of the lost city of Atlantis, right? The lost island of Atlantis. So Númenór is his Atlantis story, right? It's his working.
Probably why that popped into my head while I was reading it today.
Yeah.
I was like, this kind of sounds familiar.
But when we left off, Ar-Pharazôn had gone to challenge Sauron. He had left Númenór with a huge fleet, gone into the east to Middle-earth to challenge Sauron, and he was expecting this huge, like, knockdown, drag-out battle with Sauron, and Sauron just kind of came out with his hands up and said, I surrender.
Right.
And Sauron went back with Ar-Pharazôn as a willing prisoner back to Númenór. And eventually, over time, Sauron kind of works his way from prisoner into the good graces of Ar-Pharazôn and all the other people who were kind of the ruling class.
Deceitfully manipulate them.
Yeah, and that very story itself reminds me of Melkor.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely.
And because when he first, it's still early on in the history of Middle Earth, during the Age of the Two Trees, Melkor had, he had been captured by the Valar as the elves were trying to come. They had captured They had fought a big war with Melkor because they were scared for the elves and they wanted to protect the elder children of Ilúvatar from Melkor and his minions. So they fought a war with Melkor, and they brought him back and imprisoned him in Valinor, right? And I think it was in the halls of Formenos. I can't remember exactly where it was, but they imprisoned him for a long time. He was in prison for a long time, and eventually, they kind of thought he had repented and that he was ready to come out and be a good boy. And for a while he seemed like he had, but he was really just kind of poisoning the well. He was just kind of whispering evil things to different people and trying to tell people that this person over here is out to get you, and he would tell that person that they're out to get you, and just setting people at war with each other. So you get the same impression that that's what Sauron's doing here. But maybe the most insidious thing that Sauron does is he latches on to their growing distrust of the Valar, and their growing sort of atheism against Ilúvatar.
Yes.
And tells them that the true God, the true Lord, is the Lord of the Darkness, Melkor.
Right. And
so he begins to set up this false religion, right? This religion that worships Melkor.
Yes.
The first order of business, the first really tangible thing that Sauron does to that effect is that he attempts to get Ar-Pharazôn to willingly destroy Nimloth the Fair.
The tree.
Right, the tree. Yeah. So, do you understand the relevance of the tree, by any chance?
Well, what do you mean the relevance?
Or just
why is it important?
the like where the tree came from?
No, I don't think I do.
Okay, so Nimloth is descended from Telperion, right?
Oh,
so Nimloth.
Okay.
So
basically,
Nimloth is like the great grand offspring of Telperion. Okay. So there's like basically you have Telperion, which was the silver tree of the two trees, right? Mm-hmm. And then there was from the fruit of Telperion, there was before Telperion died, there was a tree basically offspring of Telperion given to the elves in Tirion, okay, which was like the great elvish city just near Valinor.
Okay.
And then after that, there was another tree off of that was given to Tol Eressëa, to the elves on Tol Eressëa. Okay. And then off of that came Nimloth.
Got
right?
it. Got it.
So,
Okay.
So Nimloth is like, it's almost like a sign of the Valar's presence, right? It's like a sign. It's like almost like a memorial or or like a sacrament of the Valar.
Got it.
Right.
Okay.
And so Sauron's first thing is, well, we got to destroy Nimloth. And what's the big like symbolic thing he does with Nimloth? Once he gets them to destroy it? Do you remember what he does with the wood of Nimloth?
Oh yeah, he burns it.
Yeah.
In his temple.
Right.
Right on the altar of the sacrifice.
In the temple he constructed specifically for the worship of Melkor.
Right. And it didn't like give off like that horrible smell, and like the land was covered in a cloud of smoke for days.
Right. It says that for after the assault, the king yielded to Sauron and felled the white tree and turned then wholly away from the allegiance of his fathers. And Sauron caused to be built upon the hill in the midst of the city of the Númenóreans, Armanelos the Golden, the mighty temple. And it was in the form of a circle at the base, and there the walls were 50 feet in thickness, and the width of the base was 500 feet across the center. And the walls rose from the ground 500 feet, and they were crowned with a mighty dome. And the first fire upon the altar Sauron kindled with the hewn wood of Nimloth, and it crackled and was consumed. But men marveled at the reek that went up from it, so that land lay under a cloud for 7 days, until slowly it passed into the west. So I like that last little touch about how the reeking cloud of Nimloth passed into the west. It was like a last little, it was like a little
slap in the
insult,
face,
slap in the face to the Valar.
Yep.
And now it is good to note that the people of Amandil, and specifically Isildur, right? Remember who Isildur is?
Yes, I remember who Isildur is.
Isildur bravely went and got a fruit of Nimloth to take with them, so that they would be able to carry on the legacy of Nimloth, because they kind of sensed that things weren't looking good for Nimloth or for Númenór as a whole.
And that was something that he did completely on his own, right? I mean, that nobody asked him to go do that.
It says
it was a dangerous mission.
It says Amandil, who was the grandfather of Isildur.
Right.
He says he spoke to Elendil and the sons of Elendil, recalling the tale of the trees of Valinor. And Isildur said no word, but went out by night and did a deed for which he was afterwards renowned. So yeah, Isildur does this heroic act, but unfortunately, it really makes Ar-Pharazôn and Sauron mad, and so that's the straw that breaks the camel's back, and they actually destroy Nimloth at that point. So next we have, so Isildur does capture that. He gets this fruit. He has this fruit of Nimloth, and we find out that not only is this a temple dedicated to the worship of Melkor, but they're actually making sacrifice to Melkor, that he should release them from death. And they actually choose human victims. They choose men as their victims for these sacrifices, right? Which, I mean, human sacrifice, that's like, that's the worst.
Yeah. Like Aztec.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and different, there's been different cultures that have practiced human sacrifice throughout the centuries, but
but there's just something so just evil, I feel like, about that. I mean, you can't get more barbaric.
It would seem, yeah.
I mean, sacrificing something that was made in God's own image.
Yeah.
In a likeness.
Right. And so it says that you never openly on the charge, and said most often from among the faithful they chose their victims. So they actually go and try to find the people of Amandil to be their victims, the faithful, the ones who are still trying to be the elf friends.
Who could we refer to them as martyrs, possibly?
Possibly, yeah. I think that's a reasonable thing to say. It says, yet never openly on the charge that they would not worship Melkor, the giver of freedom. Rather was cause sought against them that they hated the king and were his rebels, or that they plotted against their kin, devising lies and poisons. These charges were for the most part false, yet those were bitter days, and hate brings forth hate. It's interesting how all of this evil that's still being committed here is committed. It's always it always masks itself a little bit in a way that's like, it's not outright saying like, well, they wouldn't worship Melkor, it doesn't come outright and say they refuse to worship Satan. It's like, well, they weren't being loyal subjects to the king, who just so happened to be telling them to do that.
Right. Right.
It always.
It's not in your face.
And I think Tolkien just does it. He's so masterful when he's kind of thinking about the way that evil presents itself and evil carries out its business.
We think about even, I'm reading this book right now that takes place right before World War II. And it talks a lot about what the Nazis are up to, and I was just reading about these laws that Hitler, had put into, had approved by the Reichstag or whatever. And even those, you read them, and like they sound so innocuous, right?
Yeah.
Because of the way the words are chosen, and all this stuff. But then you realize what they're really getting at, and it's horrible. Like how they're obviously like pinpointing a particular race for, things that really shouldn't be.
Yeah.
That are not illegal or reason for. But it's kind of the same thing, right? It's just that evil, how it can, like you said, it can just be masked. And then you actually dig deeper and you're like, whoa, that's pretty wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and that's kind of the funny thing. You used a term earlier about like barbarian or barbaric. And, it's interesting you bring up the Nazis because, one of the things I think about when I think about the Nazis is this like, a pretty advanced civilization.
Yeah.
And...
Absolutely.
And the way they carried out a lot of their quote unquote barbaric acts was in this like sort of like quote unquote civilized way, right? It was in this very sort of like it wasn't just like necessarily there was a lot of slaughter, but in different forms, but a lot of what they did was carried out in this like very sort of orderly, legalistic way, you know what I'm saying? It was like, well, we're merely fulfilling the laws of our society, and it kind of used that against people. So, and maybe it used that against people who were maybe, conscientiously had qualms about it, were disturbed in conscience by some of the things that were going on. It kind of, even used that against a lot of them,
Yeah, absolutely.
So, we have Nimloth destroyed, the worship of Melkor instated by Sauron, and even so, this is really interesting. And it says because why are they doing this again? Why are they deciding that it's good to worship Melkor? Do you remember?
Because they want eternal life.
Exactly. The whole reason they start to distrust the Valar in the first place is because they're like, why can't we live forever? Right. Why is it that we have to die?
Yeah.
And so they've reached this point where they're just willing to do anything, and including the worship of Melkor, in order to achieve eternal life. And
so they thought that they could just. I guess I was just confused even reading this today, because I was like, well, what was their line of thought here? Like, how did they expect to get eternal life out of all of this? Like, were they gonna kidnap the Valar and basically say, give us eternal life or we kill all of you? Or did they think that once they conquered the Valar that the gift would just magically pass on to them? Like, do we know? I mean, what?
Well, he doesn't go into the specifics of how they thought it would work in their heads. I think it was more of a just like, you've been lied to. It was like, you've been putting you've been worshiping this false, what was put to them was, you've been worshiping this falsehood, and you've been told all these like fairy tales that aren't really true. And what you need to do is you need to worship the Lord of Darkness, who can give you all these things, right? Okay. You need to be going to him. He's the one they don't want you to listen to, because they're really the bad guys, right?
Yeah.
Again, like the more I read this, like as I was reading it, it just felt so like on topic with the times we live in, because we're living in a time when people literally are so full of their their own like belief in their own abilities and kind of, you know, prideful views that, I mean, there are literally people who talk today about we can achieve eternal life on our own terms, right? Like literally like this life. Yes. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm not talking in a religious sense. I'm talking like we can take a human life and extend it for eternity, you know, or whatever, you know, until the end of the cosmos, which by practical measures in our minds means eternity because it's so long, right? You know, there are men alive today whose goal is to figure out how to do that, right? And you just think about like what that would look like, and you know, it just like it seems like that would be misery. Like it seems like at what point do you realize I really wish I was dead right now? You know,
I'm tired. I just want to go.
Well, and there's all these schemes in which they do it. You know, they like transfer their own consciousness to other bodies and that kind of thing. Which, well, you know, where do you get the other bodies? And you know, like what do you do with all that? And so it's all this like scheming.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But and it's like the motive or the goal. You know, it's not necessarily bad in and of itself of wanting to live, because life is a good thing. You know, you want to live as long as you can, and you know, in good health and all those kinds of things. But it's like the real problem is like the spiritual problem. Like it's a failure to recognize, and this is what Tolkien seems to be calling out here, is that death is appropriate to man. Right? Death is something we've been given as a gift,
right?
And it doesn't mean it's the end. Again, in this time, in the second age of Middle-earth, they don't know what lies beyond the grave for them.
Sure, yeah.
But they're encouraged to think hopefully about it, right? To think like, okay, there's some greater plan that you just haven't been told yet, and you just need to trust.
Right.
You know, you got to blindly trust a little bit, right?
Right. Yeah.
Whereas, you know, the Melkor's promise is that you just worship me, you bow down to me, and I'll make sure you have this life eternally. You won't have to die.
Freedom, and I'll take care of it all.
So all that is to say, we could go on talking about that for probably for a whole episode, or maybe even a couple. But it's interesting to note that just as we're talking about this new cult of Morgoth and the fact of Melkor, and the fact that in order for us to worship this being who's supposed to bring us longer life and, you know, maybe even eternal life, and here in this world on our terms, we have to kill a bunch of other people in order to appease him.
It's kind of ironic,
right? That's how we make this work,
right?
But it says, but for all this, death did not depart from the land; rather, it came sooner and more often, and in many dreadful guises.
So the opposite, really, what they were trying to accomplish is they got really the opposite.
Right. You know, it's like Lucy pulling the football away, right, from Charlie Brown. You know, it's like, come on, just try it. It'll be perfect this time. Just try one more time. No, it never works. And it says, for whereas aforetime men had grown slowly old, and had lain them down in the inn to sleep, when they were weary at last of the world, now madness and sickness assailed them. And yet they were afraid to die and go out into the dark, the realm of the Lord that they had taken. And they cursed themselves in their agony. And men took weapons in those days and slew one another for little cause. For they were become quick to anger. And Sauron, or those whom he had bound to himself, went about the land, setting man against man, so that the people murmured against the king and the lords, or against any that had aught that they had not. And the men of power took cruel revenge. And nonetheless, for all this, it seemed to the Númenórians that they had prospered. And if they were not increased in happiness, yet they grew more strong, and their rich men even ever richer. So there's just all of this, you know, people are getting crueler to one another, they're getting meaner to one another, the more obsessed not with serving, not with using the gifts that they've been given for the good of the wider world, and of taking this to the rest of the world, and, you know, bringing other men into the light of the Valar, but it's all for self-service. It's all for me.
Totally greedy.
Yeah.
And selfish.
Greedy, self-centered, all that kind of thing. And they're more miserable. Yeah. They might even have more stuff, but they're more miserable.
Right.
Again, just seems to ring so true to our time.
It's kind of eerie.
Yeah. I mean, I think it almost reads like social commentary in a way, you know, like, Just the way that the whole dynamic unfolds.
Yeah.
It feels a little bit prophetic. So even through all of this, even as all these things are happening, Ar-Pharazôn is still growing more and more hateful of the Valar.
Mm-hmm.
And so he makes this speech. He says, "The Valar have possessed themselves of the land where there is no death, and they lie to you concerning it, hiding it as best they may, because of their avarice, and their fear lest the kings of men should wrest from them the deathless realm, and rule the world in their stead. And though doubtless the gift of life unending is not for all, but only for such as are worthy, being men of might and pride and great lineage, yet against all justice is it done that this gift, which is his due, should be withheld from the King of Kings, Ar-Pharazôn, mightiest of the sons of earth, to whom Manwë alone can be compared, if even he. But great kings do not brook denials, and take what is their due." And so Ar-Pharazôn determines that he's going to turn his fleet to the west and assault the Valar.
Yeah. It's a rather ambitious plan.
Yeah. And so, again, you see in his words there this idea that, maybe not all men can have eternal life, but the greatest of men, who, like me, who is the greatest of men, should be able to. And so I'm going to go take what's mine. Yep. Right? I'm going to go grasp for it.
You see, like, this just completely unrealistic, like, egoism take over.
Yeah.
You kind of, it's one of those people you look at and be like, who do you think you are? Like, you think you're going to do what? And this is a good idea. Why? Like, it just seems so absurd. Like, you can just see just that fall deeper and deeper into that, that self-centeredness and just that lust for power and wealth and just, more and more and more, and the toll it's taking. It's very scary.
Yeah, and it's like the climb to the top, right? It's like whoever's lucky enough to get to the top, maybe they'll have a chance to live forever or live longer.
Yep.
But
at what cost, right?
Sorry for all you people on the bottom. You've got to be my stepping stones to that.
Yeah, survival of the fittest.
It really is. So, at this, Amandil determines that he needs to go to the west. He needs to beat Ar-Pharazôn to the shores of Aman.
Right.
Not in order to warn the Valar per se, because he knows that they can take care of themselves, but almost in order to say, like, they're still good people, that please don't please don't wipe them out.
Moses, right?
Yeah.
Like, wasn't it Moses?
Well, there's Abraham.
Abraham, that's what I was thinking of.
When it comes to some of the city, but Moses does the same thing, right?
Well, I was thinking of, would you save the city for just 100 good people?
Right.
What about for just 80? What about for just 60? Mm-hmm. That was Abraham.
Yeah, that was Abraham.
It seems like that's kind of what he's doing.
Yeah.
What Amandil is doing.
Right. So Amandil decides that he's going to do this, and he's going to do it alone, and he tells Elendil to take him and his sons and journey to the east and be prepared to leave on a moment's notice. Okay. So it says that what Amandil actually says is, if I thought that Manwë needed such a messenger... Actually, you read some. I've been reading a lot. 275.
Okay.
You don't even have your book open.
Well, I was just enjoying
some podcast
to you.
host you are.
Whatever. I have it all up here. I don't need my book. All right. Where do you want me to start?
275, where it says, in the middle of the page where it says, if I thought that Manwë.
Okay. If I thought that Manwë needed such a messenger, said Amandil, I would betray the king. For there is but one loyalty from which no man can be absolved in heart for any cause. But it is for mercy upon men and their deliverance from Sauron the deceiver that I would plead, since some at least have remained faithful. And as for the ban, I will suffer in myself the penalty, lest all my people should become guilty.
Yeah. So he's basically, he's out for deliverance, and this is, in a way, this is Arundil's true son, right? Like, this is,
yes,
the true descendant of Arundil,
yes,
right? Going into the west, knowing that he might he probably will never come back from it, but in order to obtain the aid for the people that he leaves behind.
Right.
So a good soul in that man.
Absolutely. Very sacrificial.
It is said that Amandil set sail in a small ship at night and steered first eastward, and then went about and passed into the west. And he took with him 3 servants dear to his heart, and never again were they heard of by word or sign in this world, nor is there any tale or guess of their fate. Men could not a second time be saved by any such embassy, and for the treason of Númenór there was no easy absolving. And so it says that Elendil did all that he was told by his father. Interestingly, they took 7 stones, and those are the gift of the Eldar to them, and those stones are the Palantiri, right? The seeing stones that eventually wind up in, like in Isengard and in Minas Tirith,
like
and
the crystal balls,
right? Yeah, the little crystal balls that they use.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. And then the fruit of Nimloth the Fair goes with them as well.
So they uprooted the tree, or just the fruit? Because hadn't they planted it?
What?
You're talking about Nimroth, right? Or
Nimloth.
Nimloth.
The son. Oh, I'm sorry, but in the ship of Isildur was guarded the young tree, the scion of Nimloth.
So they basically uprooted it, right?
I guess so. Yeah.
And transported it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a way you can do that and keep it
There is
alive.
a way, absolutely.
Yeah.
Just have to be very careful.
Right.
Because I've tried to do it before and it didn't work.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a good thing. It's a good thing you weren't there doing it.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Good thing I wasn't the one uprooting Nimloth and putting her on the boat.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, after all of this, it's interesting what happens next. So basically, Númenór starts to have really bad weather, and
which is unlike, like, it isn't before all this started happening. They had nice weather.
Right. Exactly.
Like San Diego.
Yeah, it was beautiful all the time, sunny and 68.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
humidity.
Rained whenever it needed to. Exactly.
But only for a few minutes at a time.
Right. And it says all of that started to change. For the sky itself was darkened, and there were storms of rain and hail in those days, and violent winds. And ever and anon a great ship of the Númenóreans would founder and return not to haven, though such a grief had not till then befallen them since the rising of the star. And out of the west there would come at times a great cloud in the evening, shaped as it were an eagle, with pinions spread to the north and the south, and slowly it would loom up, blotting out the sunset, and then uttermost night would fall upon Númenór. And some of the eagles bore lightning beneath their wings, and thunder echoed between sea and cloud. Then men grew afraid. Behold, the eagles of the Lord of the West, they cried. The eagles of Manwë are come upon Númenór, and they fell upon their faces. And so they assume that this is the Lords of the West striking first, and so you kind of see Manwë being, of course, the Valar of the air, of the sky. Mm-hmm. It would seem that this is his first little. This is his warning. This is his shot across the bow, right?
Right.
Don't
mess with me.
Turn around before it's too late. Mm-hmm.
You're in for trouble. And it said that some of them would repent for a season,
right?
But others hardened their hearts and shook their fists at heaven. Yeah.
It says, the lightnings increased and slew men upon the hills and in the fields and in the streets of the city, and a fiery bolt smote the dome of the temple and shore it asunder, and it was wreathed in flame. But Sauron stands there and defies the lightning and is unharmed. And they did all that, they called him a god and did all that he would. But all the more did Ar-Pharazôn press on with his armament. So Ar-Pharazôn is undeterred. If anything, this just hardens him and steels him more for, that he needs to get his assault on the Valar underway.
Yep.
So he puts together this humongous fleet.
Right.
278, you want to read that thing, Thus the fleets
of the Númenóreans moved against the menace of the west, and there was little wind, but they had many oars and many strong slaves to row beneath the lash. The sun went down, and there came a great silence. Darkness fell upon the land, and the sea was still, while the world waited for what should betide. Slowly the fleets passed out of the sight of the watchers and the havens, and their lights faded, and night took them, and in the morning they were gone. For a wind arose in the east, and it wafted them away, and they broke the ban of the Valar, and sailed into forbidden seas, going up with war against Deathless, to wrest from them everlasting life within the circles of the world. To wrest from them everlasting life.
Yeah.
Like it just seems so impossible.
Yeah, well, how are you gonna take it? Is it like a is it like a little like
is like a charm around their neck that you're gonna rip off, or is it like something in their pocket that you're gonna steal? Like, how are you gonna wrest everlasting life from them? Well,
it makes you think in a way about like the ring. You know, the whole idea of the ring and being this object that people want and want to take from each other, right?
Yes.
That they think will somehow lead to their ultimate happiness.
Yep.
It's as if it's something you can take and not just something that's part of who you are.
Right.
So they journey, they get to the shores, and it's like, it's kind of eerie and quiet the way that it was when Arendil arrived. Mm-hmm. When Arendil arrived upon the shores, and it was all very, very quiet, right?
Not much going on.
And it says, then Manwë upon the mountain called upon Ilúvatar, and for that time the Valar laid down their government of Arda. But Ilúvatar showed forth his power, and he changed the fashion of the world, and a great chasm opened in the sea between Númenór and the Deathless Lands, and the waters flowed down into it, and the noise and smoke of the cataracts went up to heaven, and the world was shaken. And all the fleets of the Númenóreans were drawn down into the abyss, and they were drowned and swallowed up forever. But Ar-Pharazôn the king and the mortal warriors that had set foot upon the land of Aman were buried under falling hills. There it is said that they lie imprisoned in the caves of the Forgotten, until the last battle and the day of doom. So, Ilúvatar, the Valar kind of stepped back and let Ilúvatar do his thing, and he changes the shape of the world. He literally changes the shape of the world. A great chasm opened in the sea between Númenór and the Deathless Lands, and the waters flowed into it. And the fleet goes down into the abyss, and the armies of Ar-Pharazôn who are standing upon the shores of Aman get buried under falling hills in the caves of the Forgotten. Not only that, but then right after that we have Númenór itself, which was right on the edge of the Great Rift, falling into the abyss itself. It fell and went downward into darkness and is no more. And there is not now upon earth any place abiding where the memory of a time without evil is preserved. For Ilúvatar cast back the great seas west of Middle-earth, and the empty land east of it. And new lands and new seas were made, and the world was diminished, for Valinor and Erisea were taken from it into the realm of hidden things. So it would seem that, literally now, Valinor, Erisea, all of Aman is no longer a part of the world, right? It's like taken up into almost a different realm.
Yeah.
I've seen some depict this as, and I don't know that Tolkien was entirely specific, but some depict this as saying that before the world was flat, or like kind of rounded, but still essentially flat.
Okay.
Not a globe. And so you could have journeyed to Valinor and Aman, right? But now it's made round, and literally the lands of Aman and Erisea are lifted up like into the sky almost. So you would have to almost like leave the boundaries of the globe and kind of keep sailing straight instead of following the rounded curve of the globe, and like sail into the sky in a way in order to get to these lands.
That's physically possible.
Well, not physically possible.
Yeah, not physically possible.
Yeah. No, but that's I don't know that that's exactly if Tolkien had that literal an interpretation in mind, but it's just not a part. So in order to get there, you literally have to be given that gift.
Yeah, you have to be able to fly.
Yeah. Well, you have to be given the gift to be able to get there.
Okay.
Right. You have to be allowed
to
passage.
leave the confines of the more earthly realm.
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
Yeah. But it's just crazy to think that this whole great land is like swallowed into the sea.
Yeah.
Into nothingness.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a overwhelming mental picture.
Yeah.
It's like, Whoa.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess...
Well, the good news is Elendil escapes, along with his sons and their party of the faithful.
Right.
And they set forth in 9 ships, 4 for Elendil, 3 for Isildur, and 2 for Anarion. And they arrive upon the shores of Middle-earth, and they begin to establish outposts of the Dunedain there.
Right.
So, it is not the end of the Dunedain. It's merely the end of Númenór.
They have a few left.
Right. As for Sauron, Sauron had remained on Númenór, and so he loses, once and for all, he loses his beautiful appearance that was able to sort of seduce people, before into thinking that he was really a good guy. He's now a very frightful looking being.
So his body was killed, but his spirit remained.
Yeah, what it says here is that, but Sauron was not of mortal flesh, and though he was robbed now of that shape in which he had wrought so great an evil, so that he could never again appear fair to the eyes of men, yet his spirit arose out of the deep and passed as a shadow in a black wind over the sea, and came back to Middle-earth and to Mordor that was his home. There he took up again his great ring in Barad-dûr and dwelt there, dark and silent, until he wrought himself a new guise, an image of malice and hatred made visible. In the eye of Sauron the terrible few could endure. So, he's no longer pleasant to look at. He can't really deceive you. You know he's evil when you look at him. He's like, that's a bad dude.
The disguise is gone.
Yeah. So yeah, that's that's pretty much it. That's the story of the downfall of Númenór.
Literally the drowning.
The drowning of Númenór. It's it's over a 3,000 year history. That entire thing covers a span of over 3,000 years.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Well, you got to remember the kings of Númenór lived for a long time, and so Ar-Pharazôn was like the 24th king or something like that.
Okay.
So yeah, long passage of time. Númenór was around for a long time, and now it's gone.
Poof.
Yeah, and so that's where the second age is still going on. There's still some stuff to happen, plenty of stuff to happen in the second age, although we are close to the end of it. But that is the sad, tragic story of Númenór. So now you know what people are talking about when they talk about Númenór.
Yeah. I'll have to go back and reread.
Yeah. Well, we got a lot more to read about, and
true.
the Lord of the Rings. So
yeah. Good deal.
Yeah. Any other thoughts? Any stuff I skipped that?
No, I think you hit all the high notes.
All right.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Sounds good to me. Let's see. What are we gonna do now? We're gonna do some haiku.
Oh, sweet. Haiku time. Haiku time. I could see you were trying really hard not to dance. You just couldn't help it. You got a little head bob going.
I was just trying to get the music to hurry up because I feel like it's this like no talking time. I don't really know what to say.
Oh, you could just dance. That's what I do.
Yeah, but that doesn't really show up on the podcast. Yeah.
True. Maybe we need words.
Well, maybe.
Maybe.
If you want to write some words, I'm fine with that. Well, I'm fine with that until I hear them.
Maybe I'll do that.
Okay, well, give it a stab. What? I will put this out here to our readers. If anybody wants to write words for the haiku theme song, then we'll entertain your words.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
We should have a contest.
Maybe. Yeah, we'll just if you want to do words, submit them, and we'll see if we find any that feel worthy of the greatness that is the Tolkien haiku theme song.
There we go. The gauntlet has been thrown.
The die has been cast.
Yes.
The gauntlet has been cast. The die has been thrown. All right.
Did I say it wrong?
No, you said it right.
Oh.
I was intentionally saying it wrong.
Okay.
All right. We have haiku from Josh, which I forgot to read last time, and then Mary Grace.
Ah.
And do you want to read you wrote one, right?
I did write one.
Good. I did mine last time. So Didn't do any this time.
Lame excuse, Carswell. Lame excuse.
All right, you gonna go first?
Yes, I'll go first. Okay. A true leader, he sails for salvation to plead, like father, like son.
Nice.
Yeah.
That was that a reference to Arendil and then Amandil?
Yes.
Okay. Nice.
Yes.
Good.
Yeah. I mean the what's the word I'm looking for? Correlation or the
parallel.
Parallel. Thank you.
Yeah.
It was pretty obvious. So.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Got another one?
No, I do, but I don't really like it.
You sure?
Now that you mention it, I'll read it.
Okay.
Here we go. Now known for a bane, a renowned deed he once did, fruitful light to save.
Nice.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I just want people to know that, Isildur isn't all bad. Like,
Yeah,
he used to
he
be
did
good.
some good stuff
Yeah.
in his life, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, good. All right. Well, here, I'll read one from Josh, and you can read his other one, and then I'll read one from Mary Grace, and you can read your other one.
Okay.
All right, here's Josh. Great kingdom flooded, Númenór the island jewel, by dark hand shattered. Nice.
The island jewel. I like that. Shattered. Nice use of words.
Yes.
Yes.
That's what poetry is.
Yeah. Well done, Josh.
Nice use of words.
All
right. Okay.
Okay, so here's Josh's second one. Elendil sails east. The fate of men split in two. King sails west. Doom.
Nice.
Doom. Good.
Yeah,
I like
well
it.
done.
Very well done, as usual.
All right, Mary Grace is up.
Mary Grace!
All right, here we go. Alas, Númenór, a land that is now lost. Woe to the greed of men. Nice.
That's good.
Good
That's
stuff.
Real good.
Good
yeah.
stuff.
All right, here's Mary Grace's second one. Sauron ensnares slaves. 9 for mortal men doomed to die. Dark Ulari. Did I say that right?
Ulari. Yeah.
Ulari.
I think it's Ulari, actually.
9 for mortal men.
But she's referring to the name that they give for the ring wraiths earlier. And I remember.
Fancy. Getting all fancy on us, like she likes to do.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, there we go. And when the Ulari rose, that were the ring wraiths.
Yeah. Got it. Very nice.
Good job.
Thank you,
job,
guys.
everybody. Well done.
You never disappoint, ever.
All right. Well, the plan for next time is to read the last little section there in the Silmarillion, the Rings of Power in the Third Age.
Okay.
It kind of continues the story of the Second Age and actually tells in very low detail the story of the the Lord of the Rings, but it doesn't go into a lot of detail. So,
okay.
But it kind of connects. It provides a whole full picture of the completion of the Second Age and then what happens in the Third Age for the downfall of Sauron, the eventual final downfall of Sauron.
Okay.
Right.
It's like a bird's eye view.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's the last bit in the Silmarillion.
Okay.
In the official published Silmarillion, so we're gonna go ahead and knock that out.
Sounds good.
And then we'll go back to Lord of the Rings after that.
Perfect.
Go back to start on the Two Towers.
I like the way that sounds.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too. All right. Anything else you want to share with our listeners?
Not that I can think of.
Yeah. Well. We're serious. If you want to submit some words, I just kind of came up with that on the fly. But if you want to submit words for the Tolkien Haiku theme song,
Really,
I always do. I feel a little.
Songwriters out there.
I feel a little uncomfortable. I always feel like I got to say something because it is 30 seconds long. So I feel like I got to say something in order to not make it seem
so long.
Yeah, so long in this dead air time. It may not seem long to everybody else, but hey, if you want to give it a stab, have fun with it.
Yeah,
and
please.
We'll see what we think.
That could be a blast.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for listening, everybody.
Yes, thank you, guys.
And we will talk at you next time.
Yes, we will.
All right.
All right. Bye, y'all.
Peace out. Please remember to check out truemyths.org for show notes and plenty of other Tolkien goodness. Also, if you're enjoying the podcast, would you please leave the Tolkien Road a rating and feedback on iTunes? It's a great way to support the show and takes less than a minute. On our next episode, we'll discuss the Rings of Power in the Third Age, the final section in the Silmarillion. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, the road goes ever on.